Greetings classes, Mitchell Van Lang's multi-engine out procedures. The scenario was that we had a rough engine running on the last trip, and so we decided to review the engine out procedures as a precaution. As a side note, me as a A&P mechanic and IA and a commercial multi-engine pilot, if I had a rough running engine on a multi-engine airplane, I would not go flying in the airplane until I figured out what the problem was. But since that's not the scenario, we're going to go through the scenario. First thing we'll talk about is demonstration of SRM, managing all resources available, proper use of automation management in all phases of flight, like the 430. Areas, risk of decisions and managing situations. Make sure that you use crew resource management if you have a passenger to the best of your ability. Task management throughout the flight. Make sure you use a checklist and follow the checklist at each phase of flight for takeoff, climb, cruise, descent, and landing. Use ADM and risk management to identify hazard and mitigate risks, implement controls, and make sure that you're aware of any terrain in the area so you don't crash any mountains. And you're going to manage the flight as a private pilot with a multi-engine rating. Okay, the next thing we're going to talk about is the significance of V-speeds for engine and operations. VMC is the red line, and it's minimum single engine controllable airspeed, and VSYE is the single engine best rate of climb. That's the blue line on the airspeed indicator. Here's the page from the Baron 58 POH with the V speeds indicated on red, blue line, and the red line. And for a red radial, it's 81 knots, and for the blue line, it's 100 knots. So blue line is the best speed the speed you can climb the best. And red line is VMC, which means you have minimum speed you can have to have aerodynamic control of the aircraft. Okay, multi-engine out procedures, directional control with one engine inoperative. So if you have the critical engine is inoperative, the P factor from the propeller on the outboard engine on the right side will have a much greater P factor than the left engine because the center of thrust is going to be much further away from the longitudinal axis of the aircraft. Reasons for loss of directional control will be loss of aerodynamic authority of the rudder, and basically you stall the rudder and don't have enough. The angle of attack on the rudder is too great to produce any sort of aerodynamic authority. Indications of VMC. The indications of VMC when you get too slow, the aircraft will start to yaw and roll to the dead engine, and you'll get to the point in the yaw and the roll that you won't be able to recover with the flight controls, and the aircraft will, as in one of the videos I watched, basically said it'll do a horizontal snap roll and spin you right into the ground. And safe recovery from VMC is reduced pitch to blue line and pull the power back on the operating engine to remove some of the asymmetrical thrust. VMC and stall speed relationship. The VMC speed reduces with altitude and stall speed stays the same. Okay, factors affecting VMC are altitude. Like I said, the higher you go in altitude, the lower VMC gets. Weight and CG location. The heavier the aircraft, the better it is for controllability because the aircraft's heavier. Airplane configuration with landing gear down, it gives you more drag, so it helps you not necessarily control the aircraft. It makes the asymmetrical thrust less of a factor. The windmilling propeller is a huge deal. If it's not feathered, it's basically 6 feet of plywood out there blocking the wing, so it reduces lift on that wing and also a ton of drag. and the power on the operative engine is if it's the right engine on a dual, counter-rotating prop, not counter-rotating props, both props turning clockwise, looking forward. The outboard prop on the right side produces a lot more negative asymmetrical thrust. Okay, the next we'll talk about P factor. P factor, we discussed that a little bit already. The P factor, the descending blade, the angle of attack to the relative wind as the aircraft rolls to the dead engine, that P factor becomes greater. The spiraling slipstream, when you lose that left engine, it takes away the spiraling slipstream on the rudder. Accelerated slipstream gets worse on the right side, and you don't have it on the left side, and all you have is drag, and the torque effect, again, from the engine thrusting that aircraft, make it want to rotate around the longitudinal axis. Here's a note from the POH. It says that immediate landing is advisable regardless of takeoff weight. Continued flight cannot be assured if takeoff weight exceeds the weight determined from the takeoff weight graph. Higher takeoff weights will result in loss of attitude while retracting landing gear and feathering the propeller. Continued flight requires immediate pilot response and follow procedures. If I lose an engine on takeoff, and I'm still above the runway, I'm going to put the aircraft back on the runway. If I'm already flying, I'm at blue line, we're going to go fly and suck the flaps, gear up, and do the drill. I'm going to yaw and roll. Identification and operative engine. The aircraft will yaw and roll toward the dead engine. There'll be a lot of rudder required to the good engine side to keep the engine going straight. Exhaust gas temperature obviously on the engine that's not operating will go down, and the ball will be out. So here's the memory items. The drills, what I like to call it. One of the videos I saw with one of the super experienced older guys called it the drills. Pitch for blue lines, VOISE, mixtures, props and throttles full forward, flaps up and gear up. And if you're just taking off, that's already going to happen if you're above blue line. So you're going to identify and verify. So your dead foot's the dead engine, and then once you've identified the dead engine, you're going to partially retard that throttle to make sure to see if it's to verify that engine is dead. No change. You're going to feather that engine, feather that propeller almost immediately, and adjust the power on the operating engine to keep it at blue line and no slower than that. So the checklist items after there we go. Checklist items after positive control of the aircraft is established. Secure the in-op engine, mixture idle cut off, fuel selector off, aux fuel pump off, alternator off, cow flap closed, and electrical load monitors. You don't want to, and also you need to adjust the power on the engine so you don't cook the operating motor. So the aeronautical decision making, basically you want to use the PAVE, the decide, and the 5 Ps, the pilot, the aircraft, the environment, and external factors, and the 5 Ps are the plane, the pilot, the passengers, and the programming. We already discussed the risk of a student in a flight lesson, assessing the risk of a student. So basically anything involving aviation, you need to identify the risks and implement controls and try to eliminate the risk by identifying the hazards and implementing controls. And yeah, so that's my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for your attention.